A 35-year-old black single father walked into a restaurant believing he was meeting old friends for dinner. Within minutes, he realized the truth. They had set him up on a blind date with a single mother, not to help him heal after his divorce, but to watch him squirm. The whole table waited for him to flinch, to make a polite excuse to laugh along. Instead, Nathan Cole set down his napkin, stood up, and said 7 words that silenced every person at that table. What made him do it? The morning light came through the kitchen window, in long, pale stripes, falling across the small wooden stool where Amari sat with her hair half done. Nathan Cole worked behind her with the patience of a man who had taught himself this skill the hard way. The first braid was uneven. The second was tighter than the first. His large hands moved slowly because slow was the only speed that did not tug too hard on her scalp. "Daddy," Amari said, watching him in the reflection of the toaster. "Your braids are uglier than Miss Lana's, but I still like them." "Yeah," Nathan asked, not looking up from her hair. "Why's that, baby?" "Because you go slow," Amari answered. "Miss Lana goes fast, and it hurts." He almost smiled. He didn't because he was concentrating, but the warmth moved across his chest anyway. Amari was 7, and she had a way of saying things that made grown people feel found out. 2 years had passed since the divorce. 2 years of school lunches in plastic containers of late homework he barely understood, of learning the names of every doll in her room, and which ones could share a pillow and which ones could not. Nathan ran construction crews on commercial sites across the county, and he was good at it. But the work that took the most out of him happened in this kitchen, in this small, ordinary ritual, where a man who had once been a husband was now only a father, and still learning what enough looked like. His phone buzzed on the counter. Ryan. Then a second buzz. The group chat. He read it later after Amari had been dropped at her summer program. Ryan and Elise had been pushing for dinner for weeks. They wanted him out of the house. They were worried about him, they said. But Nathan had known Ryan since freshman year of college, and worry from Ryan usually came with a punchline attached. The newest message in the chat told him everything. Found someone perfect for him. Single mom. Let's just put them in a room and see what happens. Nathan read it twice. He did not respond. He set the phone face down on the counter and finished his coffee. He thought about canceling. He thought about a lot of things. In the end, he told himself that maybe he was reading too much into it. That maybe these were still his people, and he was the one who had drifted. That maybe a quiet dinner with old friends would not be so bad. He showered. He chose a plain navy shirt. He drove to the restaurant on the east side of town and walked in 5 minutes early. There is something most people never notice about black men who raise children alone. They tend to be looked at through 2 different lenses, both of them wrong. The first lens turns them into an admired figure to be praised in passing, and then quickly forgotten, the inspirational single dad, applauded at a distance asked very little of. The second lens turns them into a problem to be analyzed. There must have been a reason the marriage ended. He must be hard to live with. He must be too rigid, too quiet, too proud to find someone who can stand him. Both lenses miss the same thing, the man himself. And the strangest part, the part that is hardest to admit, is that the people most likely to keep those lenses in place are not strangers. They are the friends who came over for the birthdays, the ones who raised a glass at the wedding, the ones who think they know him better than anyone. Prejudice is not dangerous when it arrives from someone who does not matter. It becomes dangerous when it arrives wrapped in the voice of someone who once told you they loved you like a brother. The restaurant was loud in the way restaurants are loud on a Friday night. Clattering plates, laughter from 2 tables over, a server moving fast between booths. Ryan waved him down from the back. Elise was already pouring wine. 2 other couples Nathan vaguely knew filled out the table faces he had not seen since some barbecue last summer. He sat down. Something registered before he could name it. The pause when he sat was a beat too long. Elise was smiling the smile she always wore when she had a plan. Ryan elbowed him in the ribs, the way men elbow each other when a joke is on the way. Then the door opened, and a woman walked in alone. She was looking for someone, scanning the room with the quick, wary glance of a person who has been late before and did not enjoy it. When her eyes met Elise's, Elise stood and waved her over with both hands. "Elena, over here," Elise called out. "Elena, everyone, this is Elena. Single mom, by the way. Total catch. I think she and our Nathan are going to get along just fine." The word landed before her name did. Single mom. Said with the kind of emphasis people use when they want a piece of information to do the work of an introduction. Nathan watched her. Elena Cruz was maybe in her early 30s, dark hair pulled back in a fast knot with a few loose strands escaping at her temple. The lipstick was a soft nude shade that looked applied in a hurry, probably in a car. She was apologizing for being 5 minutes late. Something about a sitter running behind. She slid into the booth across from him and set her purse on her lap instead of on the floor, and Nathan, who had been a husband once and a son to a single mother long before, that recognized the gesture without having to think about it. A woman whose purse never left her body was a woman who had learned that things disappear when you are not watching. The server came. Elena ordered water. The others were already on their second round. She looked up at Nathan and gave him a small, polite, exhausted smile, the kind that said she had come here as a favor to someone and was already counting the minutes until she could go home. He returned it just barely. He did not yet know what was about to happen at this table, but something in him, some old, careful instrument that had grown up watching his mother sit through dinners like this one, was already starting to hum. The jokes began lightly enough golf weather wine, and then they turned. "So Elena," one of the husbands said, leaning back, "Nathan here is the most responsible guy at this table. Soccer practice, hair appointments, the whole production." The table laughed. "Yeah," Ryan added, "between the two of you, you might as well skip the dating part. Just merge the calendars and call it done." Elise lifted her wine glass with a wink in Elena's direction. "I mean, you both already have kids. 1 + 1 = 2. Family's basically built. Saves a lot of effort, doesn't it?" This time, the laughter was the laughter of people who thought they were being clever, of people who believed they were including her in the joke, when in fact, they were the joke, and she was the punchline. Nathan looked at Elena. She was not laughing. Her hand was wrapped around her water glass, so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. Her eyes had dropped to the table. Her mouth held a small, polite curve that was not a smile so much as a brace, the way a person braces against a wind they cannot stop. For a moment, Nathan was not in the restaurant anymore. He was 8 years old at a church potluck, watching his mother sit through a long table of well-meaning relatives who talked about her in the third person while she was still in the room. He remembered the way her face had stayed perfectly still. He remembered how on the drive home she had cried silently and told him she had something in her eye. Nathan folded his napkin and set it beside his plate. He stood up. The table did not notice immediately. Then, one by one, they looked up because a 6'2" black man rising from his seat in the middle of a joke has a way of changing the temperature of a room. She didn't come here to be mocked. 7 words. The laughter died. He looked around the table without anger. The most shameful thing in this room tonight isn't that someone has a child. It's that grown people are still treating another person's hardship as entertainment. I don't know Elena, but I know she didn't come here for this. He turned to her. "Would you like to leave? I'll drive you home." Elena lifted her head slowly and looked at him, really looked at him for the first time since she had sat down. In her face, he saw the thing he had hoped to see and feared he would not, the recognition of a person who had just realized that after a very long night, someone in the room was finally seeing her as a person and not a situation. She nodded once. She picked up her purse. She walked with him toward the door, and the table watched them go without a word. There is a strange truth that most adults discover too late. Kindness is rarely the grand thing the world tells us it should be. It is not always the loud rescue or the noble sacrifice. Most of the time, the bravest act a person can perform is simply choosing not to laugh when laughing would have been the easier option. The hardest fight a grown man ever faces is not with an enemy. It is with the part of him that still wants to belong to a room that does not deserve him. So many of the people who sit beside us at dinner are carrying wounds we will never see. They smile politely. They keep their hands wrapped tight around their water glasses. They wait for the moment they can leave. Before any of us makes the next casual joke about someone's body, their past, their family. Perhaps we can stop for one breath, not from fear of being wrong, from the quiet understanding that one small joke can be the last stone dropped into a cup that was already full. Kindness sometimes begins with knowing when to stay silent. They didn't talk on the walk to his car. Elena stayed half a step behind him until they reached the curb, then asked if he wouldn't mind taking her somewhere with coffee instead of straight home. The night was still long, and she did not want it to end on the smell of that restaurant. He took her to a small diner on Wilson Avenue that stayed open late, the kind of place with vinyl booths and waitresses who called everyone honey. They slid in across from each other under fluorescent light that did neither of them any favors. Elena ordered black coffee. Nathan asked for the same. For a while, she did not speak. She turned her mug in slow quarter circles on the table. "I should thank you," she said finally. "But I'm not going to. Because I don't want you walking away from this thinking you saved me. You didn't save me. You just refused to be one of them. That's different." "That's fair," Nathan answered. "And I'm going to be honest with you since you were honest in there." Her eyes came up. "I know your type. The men who like the feeling of rescuing a single mother more than they like the single mother. 2 weeks from now, you'll find this is more work than you thought, and you'll be very polite about disappearing. I've seen it. I've seen it 3 times in 5 years. Nathan did not push back. He took a sip of his coffee. Then he said one thing. "What's his name?" "Your son." Elena's hand stopped moving on the mug. Every man she had met in the past 5 years had asked her what she did for work, where she lived, whether she was free on Saturday. Not one of them had asked her son's name before they asked her own schedule. "Matteo," she said. "He's 6. "Matteo. Okay." She studied him for a long moment, trying to decide what to do with the silence. Then, because he had not filled it for her, she filled it herself. Matteo's father was named Daniel. He had not left in one clean cut. That was the part that had cost her the most that he had left in installments. First a missed birthday, then a missed month, then half a year. Each return had come with a new toy and a new promise, and each promise had landed softer on Matteo's face than the one before it, until the day her son sat down on the kitchen floor at 5 years old and told her he didn't want to open the present on the table, because in a little while his father was going to leave again. That was the day Elena had stopped answering Daniel's calls. Not because she had stopped loving him, because her son had learned to defend himself from his own father, and that was a kind of pain she could not let happen one more time. She looked at Nathan across the table. The fluorescent light was hard on his face, but he did not flinch under it. "I'm not afraid of being alone," she said. "I'm afraid of my son having to learn how to not trust another man." "Nathan didn't promise anything," he said. "Then I won't ask him to trust me." They lingered over the second cup of coffee longer than either of them expected. When they finally stepped outside, the parking lot had emptied out and the late summer air had cooled. Elena stood near the curb waiting for her rideshare, and Nathan stood a polite 3 feet away with his hands in his pockets, neither of them quite ready to end the night. and neither of them quite sure what they were doing, standing there. She turned to him. "Can I ask you something?" "Yeah, if your daughter had been at the table tonight, sitting right next to you, would you still have stood up?" The question landed somewhere in him that nothing in a long time had reached. He took the time he needed before answering. "Yes," he said, "for 2 reasons. The first is that I don't want her growing up thinking single parents are something other adults get to make fun of. And the second is that one day, she might be the woman sitting where you were sitting. And if that day ever comes, I want her to know what it looks like for a man to stand up, even if it costs him the room." Elena did not look away. Something in her face shifted, not melted, not opened, but shifted. A door that had been bolted shut for 5 years moved 1/4 inch on its hinges. When her ride pulled in, she took her phone out and held it across to him. "Put your number in." He did. She took it back, looked at the screen, then looked up at him with the directness of a woman who had already learned that nothing in life is given for free. "You can text me. That's it for now. Don't ask to meet my son. Not until I tell you he's ready. If you can wait, then maybe we keep talking. If you can't wait, then thank you for tonight and I wish you well." "I can wait." She got into the car. He watched it go. There is a quiet truth that psychology has known for a long time, but that we rarely say plainly in everyday life. The brains of people who have been abandoned do not respond to the present. They respond to the past. When Elena watched Nathan across the diner table, she wasn't really watching Nathan. She was watching Daniel. She was watching every man who had ever taught her son how not to believe in someone. Her caution was not directed at the human being in front of her. It was directed at a history she could not put down. This is what makes love with the wounded so difficult. You are not in conversation with one person. You are in conversation with the entire archive of what was done to them. Every promise you offer is silently weighed against every promise that was ever broken before you walked in. And there is one more thing worth saying out loud, because it changes how you see a story like this. Neither Nathan nor Elena was looking for love that night. What they were both looking for, though neither would have used the word, was emotional safety. And emotional safety is far rarer than love. It is the thing you stop believing in once you have had to carry a household by yourself. People like to say that love is about giving. For a single parent, love is first about daring to receive. Daring to let one more person into a life you have already paid for. 3 weeks passed in text messages, short ones mostly. Elena sent a photo of a tray of food she had prepared for a client and asked if the plating looked professional. Nathan sent back a one-word answer. Yes. She asked what he was eating for dinner. He sent a picture of a microwaved chicken pot pie with one corner caved in. She told him that was sad, and he typed back, agreed. She did not invite him to meet Matteo. He did not ask. On a Wednesday afternoon, she was running a catering order to a contractor's office on the east side and got the address wrong. She pulled to the curb to check her phone and saw across the street a man she recognized crouched on the sidewalk in front of a convenience store. Nathan, in a high-visibility vest, was kneeling at eye level with a small boy, maybe 10 years old, the son of one of the workers on his crew. The boy was crying. A melted scoop of vanilla ice cream was puddling on the concrete by the boy's sneaker. Nathan was not buying the boy a new ice cream. Elena could see that clearly. He was just talking. She rolled down her window enough to listen. "Listen, buddy, the ice cream's already on the ground. We can't get that one back. But you got a choice. You can cry about it for 10 more minutes, or you can come inside with me and pick another one and remember to hold it tighter next time. Either one works. I'm not in a rush." The boy thought about it. He wiped his nose on the back of his hand. Then he said very quietly, "I want to go inside." They stood up together and walked in. Elena sat in her car with both hands on the wheel and did not move for a long minute. She did not get out. She did not text. She did not let Nathan know she had seen any of it. That night after Mateo was asleep, she sent him a message that was different from any she had sent before. "Mateo has a soccer game next Saturday at 10. If you want to come watch, you don't have to sit with me. The bleachers are public." It was in Elena's language, the closest thing to a key she had ever handed anyone. A month later, she let Nathan bring Amari to the park, where Mateo liked to play on Sunday mornings. It was not a planned introduction. It was framed as a coincidence, which both adults knew was a lie they were telling on purpose. Mateo was a small boy, with glasses too big for his face, and the kind of stillness that came from spending too much time around adults. He stood near the swing set, holding a juice box, and watching Amari the way he might have watched something rare and slightly suspicious. Amari did not believe in caution. She walked straight up to him. "You want to go on the slide with me? I'm taller, so I can go down first." He looked up at her and shook his head. "My mom says I shouldn't play with strangers." She sat down right there on the wood chips beside him. "My dad says the same thing. Grown-ups always say that." Neither of them spoke for the next 5 minutes. Mateo eventually reached into the pocket of his shorts and pulled out a small rock about the size of a quarter. It had a streak of mica in it that caught the morning light. "I found this today," Mateo said. "It's shiny." Amari leaned over and studied it with the seriousness of a jeweler. "That's pretty. I don't think it's a real gem, though. I've got one like it at home." Mateo's face fell. The juice box hung loose in his hand. Amari saw it. She did not pretend not to. "But it's still pretty," she said. "Pretty's enough. It doesn't have to be valuable." Mateo turned the rock over in his hand once. Then he turned it over once more. He looked up at her with the careful expression of a child who had just been told something he intended to remember. From a bench on the other side of the playground, Elena watched the whole exchange. Her hands had gone tight around her paper coffee cup without her noticing. She did not realize she was crying until Nathan, who had been sitting beside her in silence the whole time, handed her a napkin from his pocket. He didn't say anything. He just gave her the napkin. 2 months in, Elena got buried under a wholesale order and texted Nathan in something close to panic, asking if he could pick Mateo up from soccer practice. He said yes before she finished typing. Mateo was standing near the chain-link gate with his cleats in his hand when Nathan pulled up. He saw the truck. He saw who was in it. He took 1 step backward. "Where's my mom?" "Your mom's on a delivery, bud," Nathan answered. "She asked me to come get you. She texted you about it." "Did you get the message?" "I want to wait for her." Nathan had options. He could insist. He could explain. He could make the boy feel small for hesitating. He did none of those things. He pulled the truck into the gravel lot, killed the engine, walked around to the gate, and sat down on the bottom step about 6 feet from where Mateo was standing. Then he took out his phone and called Elena on video. "Hey, Mateo wants to talk to you for a second." Elena's face filled the small screen, tired standing in someone else's kitchen. "Hey, baby," she said gently to her son. "I asked Nathan to pick you up because I have to finish this job. He's somebody I trust. Do you think you can trust him too, just for the ride home?" Mateo looked at Nathan. He looked for a long time, the kind of looking a 6-year-old does when he is trying to read a face he is not yet sure of. He nodded. Once. Very small. In the truck on the way home, the boy did not speak for 15 minutes. At a red light, he turned his head slightly and asked the question without looking up. "Are you gonna leave like my dad did?" Nathan kept both hands on the wheel. He did not turn to face the boy because he understood that some questions need to be answered into the middle distance. "I don't know what tomorrow looks like. I know I'm here today. I'll be here next week. And I'm not going to promise things I can't be sure I can keep. Is that enough?" The light turned green. Mateo thought about it for almost a full block. "Yeah," he said. "That's enough." 6 months had passed since the night at the restaurant. Mateo had stopped calling him Nathan and started calling him Nate. Elena had spent a handful of weekends at his place by then, and Amari had learned which cabinet held the cereal Mateo liked. Things had not been declared. They had simply become true the way weather becomes true. It was a Tuesday evening when Elena's phone buzzed with a message from a number she did not recognize. It was a photograph. Nathan sitting at a bar with Ryan, a beer between them. Nathan was not smiling. He was leaning forward, talking, his face set in an expression Elena had seen before, the one he wore when he was saying something hard. But the photograph did not show that. The photograph showed two men, 2 beers, a bar. The caption read, "Just a heads up, sweetie. He still hangs out with us all the time. We know him better than you do. Trust whoever you want, but don't trust a single dad to stay interested. They never do." The sender in a follow-up message identified herself, Elise. What Elna did not know, what the photograph could not show her, was that Nathan had asked Ryan to meet him at that bar, specifically to end the friendship. He had told Ryan in plain language that he could no longer share his life with people who treated his family as a punchline. He had paid for his own beer and left after 20 minutes. But Elena was not looking at the night Nathan had had. She was looking at a picture, and her brain, the brain of a woman who had been left in installments, did what that kind of brain has been trained to do. It found the evidence of leaving. She did not call him. She did not text. She simply began to withdraw the way she had taught herself to withdraw years ago. Short replies, a canceled Saturday, a vague excuse about Mateo being tired. Nathan felt the shift within 48 hours. He asked if everything was okay. She said she was just busy. He let it sit for a few more days, and then on the following Sunday afternoon, he drove to her apartment without telling her he was coming. Mateo answered the door, his face lighting up the way it had started to whenever Nathan appeared. Elena came around the corner from the kitchen, and the brightness went out of her face the moment she saw him standing in the doorway. She sent Mateo to his room. She held out her phone with the photograph already on the screen. "I thought you were different, but maybe you're just running a version of the good man routine to see how long you can keep it up." Nathan looked at the screen. He looked at her. He did not rush to explain. When he spoke, it was quiet. "If you've already decided to believe a photograph over 6 months of me showing up, then nothing I say is going to be enough. I'll go home. When you're ready to listen, you call me." He turned and walked out. He did not look back. It was the first time they had truly been apart. 2 weeks passed. No messages, no phone calls. Nathan worked. He came home. He made dinner for Amari and let her win at checkers more often than was fair. She asked about Elena exactly once. "Daddy, where's Miss Elena?" "She's thinking about some things, baby," Nathan told her. "Grown-ups need time to think sometimes." Amari accepted this. Children accept more than adults give them credit for. Across town, Elena could not sleep. She looked at the photograph more times than she would have admitted to anyone. The 4th or 5th time, she finally noticed what she had not noticed before. Nathan was not smiling. He was not laughing. He was leaning forward in the posture of a man delivering bad news, not a man having a good time. One night, Mateo climbed onto her bed and put his small hand on her wrist. "Mom, did Nate leave?" "I don't know, baby." "Are you mad at him?" She did not know how to answer that one. Mateo's voice got smaller. "I liked him because he didn't promise. My dad promised. He didn't. I trusted him more." Elena lay awake long after her son had fallen asleep against her shoulder, and somewhere around 3 in the morning she went into the kitchen and cried over the sink so quietly the dishes did not even rattle. Some people are not afraid of love. They are only afraid of having to clean up the wreckage one more time after love leaves. And the saddest part is this, that fear, if it is allowed to speak first, will often become the gravedigger of the very thing it was trying to protect. When a person has lived too long inside the weight of responsibility, they stop being moved by promises. they begin to believe only in repeated presence. Tuesday morning, Wednesday night. The unspectacular hours when there is nothing to prove. That is where their trust is rebuilt slowly in small, unwitnessed acts that do not look like love until you have lived inside them long enough to recognize what they were. If you love someone who has been hurt before, do not try to convince them with words. Show them you are still there on the unremarkable days. That is where belief is built. And if you are the one who has been hurt, give yourself one breath before you pull away. Ask the harder question. Am I reacting to this person? Or am I reacting to the one who came before them? That single question has saved more relationships than any apology ever has. Elena did not call. On the 15th day, she drove to the construction site instead. It was a little past noon when she pulled into the gravel lot of a half-finished warehouse on the south end of the county. The air smelled like cut steel and diesel. Nathan was sitting on a girder 2 stories up, with a foil-wrapped sandwich in one hand, talking to nobody, eating the way men eat when their mind is somewhere else. He saw her standing down by his truck. He did not climb down right away. He finished the last bite, wiped his hands on a rag, and came down the ladder in his own time. She had rehearsed what she wanted to say on the drive over. None of it came out the way she had practiced. "I was wrong," Elena said. "I picked a photograph over 6 months of you being there. I'm sorry." Nathan looked at her for a long time. The wind moved a strand of hair across her face, and she did not bother to push it back. "What are you most afraid of, Elena?" The question went in deeper than any apology would have. She did not answer right away. When she did, it was the truest thing she had said to him since the night at the restaurant. "I'm afraid that one day you'll look at my life and think it's too much. And I'm afraid Matteo will have to learn how to forget one more man." Nathan took that in the way he took most things, slowly, without rushing to fix it. "I'm not going to promise you I'll never get tired," he said. "I'll get tired. Everybody does. But being tired isn't the same thing as leaving. Those are 2 different things. I need you to understand the difference between them, because if you keep mixing them up, you're going to throw away every good man who ever walks through your door." They did not embrace. They stood beside each other in the gravel lot while a drill ran somewhere above them, and after a while Nathan reached over and took her hand. That was all. That was enough. A week later, he asked Ryan to meet him for coffee. Not a bar. Coffee. The choice of location was the first message. Ryan came in already defensive. He knew what his wife had done. He had not stopped her. They sat at a small table near the window, and Nathan let the silence build the room for a moment before he spoke. "I'm not here to fight, man. I'm here to say one thing. For a long time, I thought we were friends because we understood each other. I think the truth is, you understood the version of me from 10 years ago. I'm not that guy anymore. I have a daughter. I have a woman I want to stay with. And I can't be friends with people who treat my family like a joke." Ryan turned his coffee cup in his hands. "Nate, come on. We didn't mean anything by it. You know us." "That's the part I want you to hear," Nathan answered. "You didn't think you meant anything by it. But the person being laughed at always knows. I used to laugh along with you with other people. I'm not proud of that. I won't do it anymore. I have a little girl who's going to grow up watching how men talk about women. I'm not going to let her grow up thinking what we used to do at that table is what grown men sound like." He stood up, put a $10 bill on the table, and met Ryan's eyes one more time without anger. "Tell Elise something for me. Tell her I'm not angry. Tell her I just don't have any more room in my life for the kind of friendship that uses my family as a joke. I don't hate either of you. I just can't walk the same road with you anymore." He left. Ryan sat there for a long time with a full cup of coffee in front of him. There is a thing about children of single parents that most adults are too proud to admit. They tend to figure out the difference between loving someone and staying with someone long before the adults around them do. Grown people use the word love to cover an awful lot. Love is why they made the promise. Love is why they left. Love is why they came back. Love is why they should be forgiven and given another chance. A child does not have the patience for any of that. A child watches one thing only, who is here on a Tuesday morning, who shows up when mom is overwhelmed, who does not forget the thing they said they would do last week. When Mateo had told his mother in the dark of her bedroom that he liked Nate, because Nate did not make promises, he was saying something that grown people spend decades learning. Love is an emotion. Staying is an action. To a child who has already been betrayed by adult emotion action is the only currency left that still has any value. Maybe what the adult world needs to learn back from its children is this: stop trying to prove love by what you say. Let it be visible in what you do, especially when no one is watching. 4 months passed. Things settled in the way. Settled things do quietly without anyone noticing the day it happened. It was a Saturday night when Elena's voice on the phone sounded wrong. She had been working 2 long weeks straight without a real break, and a fever had come on her fast. She was alone with Mateo, who was watching a cartoon in the other room and asking if she was okay every 15 minutes. She could not think of anyone else to call. She called Nathan. He was at her apartment in under 30 minutes with Amari in tow. He did not ask Elena what she needed. He simply began doing the things that needed to be done. He got her into bed. He found the thermometer in the wrong drawer on the second try. He brought her water and ibuprofen and laid a cool washcloth across her forehead with the careful, unceremonious touch of a man who had done this before, for a daughter, for a mother. Then he went into her kitchen. The fridge was almost empty. He found a half-pack of egg noodles, 3 eggs, a knob of ginger, and a bundle of green onions on their last day of useful life. He put a pot of water on the stove. Mateo appeared at his elbow, dragging a step stool from the bathroom so he could see into the pot. "Nate," the boy said, "I can do the onions." "Yeah, okay, a little bit. Your mom doesn't like a lot of onion." "I know," Mateo said matter-of-factly. "She only likes onions and sour soup." The two of them worked in silence for a few minutes. The noodles softened. Nathan cracked the eggs in one at a time and stirred slowly. He ladled a portion into a bowl and handed it to Mateo, who held it with both hands. The way a child holds something he understands is important. The boy carried the bowl down the hallway. At the door of his mother's bedroom, he turned back over his shoulder and called out without thinking, "Daddy, I forgot the spoon." The word came out of him plainly. No build-up, no ceremony. He did not even hear what he had said. He ran back down the hall, pulled a spoon from the drawer, and was up the hall again before the moment had time to land on him. Nathan stood in the kitchen with the wooden spoon still in his hand. He did not move. From the doorway, Amari watched her father, then walked over and tilted her head up at him with the expression of a child who already knew exactly what was happening. "Daddy, you're crying," Amari said. "I'm not crying, baby. The onions got me." "Daddy, you're lying." He laughed once quietly and put his hand on the top of her head. That night, after Elena slept, and both children were curled up on the couch under one blanket, Nathan sat alone at her kitchen table. He looked around the room, the little spice jars lined up by height, the calendar on the fridge with Mateo's school schedule in colored marker, a framed photograph of Elena and her son on the bookshelf, taken on a beach somewhere, both of them squinting at the sun. It was not his house, but he understood, sitting there in the soft hum of her refrigerator, that it was the house he wanted to come home to. 2 weeks later, on an ordinary Saturday evening, Elena finished clearing the dinner plates. Mateo and Amari were sprawled on the living room rug watching cartoons. Nathan was at the sink washing dishes. Elena picked up a dish towel and started drying. Neither of them said anything for a while. The water ran. The plates clinked. The cartoon laughed somewhere behind them. Nathan dried his hands. He turned to face her, and from the front pocket of his shirt, he took out a small ring box. He did not kneel. Elena, I don't have a great speech. I just know I want to wash dishes in this kitchen every night. Would that be all right with you? She held the dish towel against her chest. She did not say yes right away. Instead, she walked to the doorway of the living room and called both children's names. Mateo and Amari came in. Elena lowered herself to their level so she could look at them eye to eye. I have a question for you too. Nate just asked me if he could live here with us. But I think this is a question for 4 people, not 2. What do you think? Amari looked at Mateo. Mateo looked at Amari. They turned back to the adults at the same moment and nodded together the way children do when they have already discussed something without anyone knowing. It was Amari who took the ring box from Nathan's hand and held it out to Elena. Mateo looked up at the man standing in the doorway of his mother's kitchen. Daddy. She said yes. Nathan never told Elena that he had decided to ask her the night Mateo first called him Daddy in the kitchen. He only told Amari weeks later while he was braiding her hair before bed. She watched him in the reflection of the mirror. Daddy, does that mean Mateo's my little brother now? If you want him to be, I want him to be. But I'm still the big sister, right? You'll always be the big sister. What heals a person is not the grand declaration. It is the quiet moment of being seen as a whole human being instead of as a burden someone is generously willing to accept. Mature love does not begin with a dramatic feeling. It begins with one person standing up at a dinner table because they refuse to let another human being sit there alone inside a shame that was never theirs to carry. If you are somewhere in a story that has not yet found its ending, whether you are the one still waiting to be seen, or the one standing in a room trying to decide between laughing along and standing up, remember this: your small act of kindness is never wasted. Somewhere, someone is still alive because a person like you walked into the room at exactly the right moment and chose to be decent. Be that person. The world is quietly held together by people who choose in ordinary rooms to do the harder thing.